What if the aspects of yourself that you fear the most weren't monsters to be defeated, but forgotten parts of your soul, waiting to be recognized and integrated? Imagine for a moment that the discomfort you feel when confronting your fears, flaws, and darkest impulses is, in fact, the first step toward wholeness. In this video, we'll explore the concept of the shadow, a concept developed by the psychoanalyst Carl Jung, which connects psychology, philosophy, and spirituality in a deep call to self-transformation. The shadow represents everything we reject about ourselves, everything that has been pushed into the unconscious because it doesn't align with our expectations, beliefs, or the demands of society. However, far from being just a repository of negative traits, the shadow holds hidden treasures, essential parts of our being that, when recognized, can lead us to a more authentic and balanced life. Throughout this journey, you will discover how to identify, understand, and integrate these hidden aspects, uncovering layers of yourself that you may have never explored. This is an invitation to expand your vision of who you are and to find, in the darkness, the potential of light that has always been waiting for you. The shadow is a concept that transcends the individual, connecting with broader ideas found in various spiritual and philosophical traditions. Carl Jung described it as the unconscious side of the psyche, a repository of everything we prefer not to see in ourselves. It is where we place our fears, repressed desires, traits we deem inappropriate, and even talents or potentials we ignore for fear of rejection or failure. The shadow is not just a psychological issue. It is a universal phenomenon that reflects the complexity of human experience. This concept has parallels in spiritual traditions. In Taoism, for example, we find the symbol of yin-yang, which reminds us that light and darkness are complementary, not opposites. Balance requires the coexistence of both sides, just as our wholeness depends on accepting both our light and dark parts. Similarly, in various meditative practices, we are taught to embrace whatever arises without judgment, recognizing that integration is more powerful than repression. But why does the shadow exist? This leads us to reflect on how society and morality shape our identity. From an early age, we are taught what is good or acceptable and what we must reject or hide. These rules, often necessary for social coexistence, end up disconnecting us from authentic aspects of who we are. However, as Jung pointed out, there is no light without shadow. What we try to ignore does not disappear. It remains within us, silently influencing our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Recognizing the shadow is the first step to reclaiming what was forgotten and thus becoming whole. The shadow is a theme that resonates deeply not only in psychology but also in philosophy. We can begin by thinking about Plato's famous allegory of the cave. In this metaphor, the shadows projected on the wall of the cave represent illusions, reflections of an incomplete reality. Just as the prisoners in the cave confuse the shadows with the truth, we often deceive ourselves into thinking we are only our acceptable parts. We ignore that our true essence also includes what is hidden, what we reject or fear to face. Working with the shadow, then, is like leaving the cave and facing the light of the sun. A difficult journey, but essential to seeing who we truly are. Sigmund Freud, Jung's contemporary, also addressed similar themes when talking about the id, the most primitive and instinctive part of the human psyche. The id, like the shadow, contains repressed desires and impulses, often considered unacceptable by society. On the other hand, Friedrich Nietzsche offers us a provocative view. To achieve the Overman, one who transcends the limitations imposed by conventional morality, it is necessary to confront our inner beast. This idea challenges repression and invites us to face our instincts and desires as sources of creative strength. We can also find reflections of the shadow concept in Eastern philosophies, such as Buddhism. The notion of the non-self, for example, teaches us to abandon attachment to a fixed identity. In this context, the shadow would be part of this false self that we create to protect ourselves from our vulnerabilities. By deconstructing this identity, we can embrace the totality of who we are without fear or judgment. These philosophical and spiritual connections show us that working with the shadow is not only an individual task but a universal quest for truth. By allowing ourselves to look inward and recognize what is hidden, we take a step toward a higher state of understanding, not just of ourselves but of human nature as a whole. The shadow is not just an abstract theory or a distant philosophical concept. It manifests daily in subtle ways, and sometimes it's difficult to perceive. One of the most common ways to recognize its presence is through projection. Projection happens when we see characteristics in others that actually belong to us, but we cannot accept. For example, when we criticize someone for being selfish or impulsive, we may be rejecting those same qualities within ourselves. This dynamic reflects in our relationships and daily behaviors. The shadow reveals itself in moments when we react exaggeratedly to a situation or feel an inexplicable discomfort towards certain people. Our emotional triggers, those situations that irritate or make us insecure, are often signs of something hidden within us, waiting to be recognized. Even feelings of envy or intense admiration for someone can indicate aspects of ourselves that have been suppressed but wish to be expressed. In spiritual practice, these manifestations are opportunities for self-knowledge. Feeling jealous, for example, is not something we should deny or be ashamed of, but rather an invitation to investigate what this reveals about our desires or insecurities. Similarly, when we admire someone intensely, we can ask ourselves, is this quality I see in the other also within me but forgotten or neglected? This process of identifying the shadow requires mindfulness and courage. It is not comfortable, as it brings us face to face with parts of ourselves that we would rather not confront. However, each encounter with these manifestations brings us closer to a more authentic version of who we are. So, instead of fearing the shadow, we can begin to see it as an ally on the journey of self-discovery. When we face our shadow, we begin to perceive the profound benefits this work brings. Integrating these hidden parts leads us to a state of authenticity, a life lived more in alignment with our true essence. By accepting both the light and the darkness within us, we become more whole, and this integration generates an inner balance that transcends the idea of good or bad. We begin to understand that being human is, by definition, being contradictory and complex. This balance invites us to reflect on what it truly means to be human. We are a synthesis of opposing forces: reason and emotion, courage and vulnerability, altruism and selfishness. When we allow ourselves to embrace these polarities, we realize that they do not need to be in conflict. In fact, it is from this interaction between light and darkness that our growth is born. In the spiritual realm, confronting the shadow brings us closer to the divine or to the higher self. Many religious and spiritual traditions speak of a purification process that involves facing our fears and limitations to achieve a state of illumination or transcendence. The shadow plays a key role in this path, as it forces us to shed masks and illusions, allowing us to connect with our truest essence. Jung described the shadow as a bridge between the ego and the self, the central core of our psyche. By integrating it, we stop living only from the limited perspective of the ego and begin to access a broader sense of purpose and connection. Furthermore, working with the shadow makes us more compassionate, both with ourselves and with others. When we recognize our own duality, we are able to see the struggles and contradictions of others with more empathy. Instead of judging or condemning, we begin to understand that everyone faces their own shadows and that acceptance is a powerful path to healing, both individually and collectively. Identifying and working with the shadow is a challenging task, but one full of transformative possibilities. One of the most effective ways to start this process is through philosophical and spiritual practices that help us bring to consciousness what is hidden. One such practice is journaling or reflective writing. A simple but powerful exercise is to ask yourself, what irritates me in others that might exist in me? Writing about this without filters can reveal patterns you might never have noticed. Another important tool is meditation, especially those that include visualizations. Imagine yourself as a perfect balance of light and darkness. During meditation, visualize your shadows being embraced by the light, not as something to be eliminated, but as an integral part of who you are. This practice not only brings a sense of acceptance but also helps dissolve the fears associated with the unknown within us. Reflecting on past experiences can also illuminate aspects of our shadow. Remembering moments of judgment, shame, or discomfort and exploring the feelings associated with these memories can reveal what we've avoided facing. These moments carry important messages about who we are and what we need to integrate. A symbolic but incredibly effective method is the mirror approach. Look at yourself, literally or figuratively, and see not only what you wish to see but also what you avoid recognizing. This exercise invites us to abandon the idea that our shadow is an enemy. Instead, we can begin to see it as an ally, a vital part of our journey of self-knowledge. As Jung wisely said, what you resist persists. The more we deny our shadows, the more they manifest in destructive ways. Working with them is an act of courage and compassion for oneself. It is an invitation to transform resistance into acceptance and fear into self-discovery. The shadow is not just an individual phenomenon, it also manifests on a collective level. Just as we, as individuals, repress undesirable aspects of our psyche, societies do the same on a larger scale. This collective repression can be seen in prejudices, injustices, and social imbalances that permeate our world. When a group or culture decides that certain traits, behaviors, or ideas are unacceptable, they end up being projected onto others, whether communities, nations, or minorities. This dynamic creates divisions and perpetuates cycles of suffering. For example, the fear of the different often reflects the inability to accept diversity within ourselves. When we deny our own complexity, we become less capable of embracing external differences. This collective shadow can lead to discrimination, conflict, and exclusion, but as with the individual level, it also brings an opportunity for healing. Spirituality plays a crucial role in this process. By practicing empathy, compassion, and acceptance, we not only heal ourselves internally but also contribute to the transformation of the collective. Recognizing and working with the collective shadow requires a shift in perspective. Instead of blaming or dividing, we can seek to understand the deep roots of conflicts and respond in a more inclusive way. A practical example of this is active empathy, an exercise that can start in our everyday relationships. When faced with judgment or prejudice, we can ask, what does this reflect about the collective shadow in which I am inserted? How can I respond more consciously and healingly? Small gestures of acceptance and understanding have the power to generate great changes, both personally and socially. This approach does not eliminate the darkness of the world, but helps us transform it. By recognizing the collective shadow, we have the chance to unite in search of a more harmonious balance, based on mutual acceptance and compassion. The transformation and integration of the shadow are like an epic journey, often compared to the hero's journey in mythologies. Just as the heroes of ancient legends face monsters and challenges, each of us must face our inner shadows to achieve wholeness. This journey is not about eliminating darkness, but about learning from it, recognizing it as a vital part of our growth. Mythological heroes such as Buddha and Christ also faced their own shadows. Buddha, for example, confronted Mara, the Lord of Illusion, before reaching enlightenment. Christ faced temptations in the desert, confronting his own fears and weaknesses. These moments represent profound challenges of the ego, but also the opportunity to transcend it and find a higher connection with the self or with the divine. Carl Jung described this process of integration as individuation, a spiritual path in which the conscious and unconscious harmonize, just as light and darkness find balance. Individuation is not a destination, but a continuous journey where we learn to live more authentically, aligned with our essence. As Jung stated, only those who have crossed the darkness can find the light. This phrase encapsulates the essence of working with the shadow. It is in the courage to face what is uncomfortable that we find true freedom. This transformation is more than a personal achievement. It has the power to influence the world around us. As we become more conscious and integrated, we radiate balance and compassion, inspiring others to do the same. The hero's journey does not end in itself. It always returns to the collective, bringing wisdom and healing for all. For those who feel ready to start this journey of transformation, incorporating daily practices that connect you to your shadow can be profoundly transformative. A small daily ritual can help bring consistency and depth to the process, serving as a guide for exploring and integrating these hidden aspects. In the morning, upon waking, take a few minutes to set your intentions for the day. Ask yourself, what can I learn today about myself? Or how can I respond to challenges with more compassion? This moment of reflection prepares your mind to be more open to the signs of the shadow throughout the day. During the day, cultivate mindfulness. Be aware of your emotional triggers, those situations that stir up irritation, jealousy, frustration, or discomfort. Instead of reacting automatically, use these moments as opportunities for self-inquiry. Ask yourself, why does this bother me so much? What might this reveal about something I'm repressing in myself? This practice is not about judgment, but about curiosity and self-knowledge. At night, take time for journaling. Write about your experiences, triggers, and insights from the day. Explore your emotions sincerely without trying to justify or hide them. Reflect on what these experiences have taught you about your shadow and how they can be integrated into your life. To close the day, repeat an affirmation that celebrates the totality of who you are. I embrace all parts of me, both the light and the darkness. This simple act of acceptance is a powerful way to begin dissolving the fear and resistance that often surround the shadow. This daily ritual doesn't require perfection, only commitment. It's a reminder that integration is an ongoing process, built step by step, one day at a time. More than an exercise, it's an act of self-love and courage. As we conclude this profound theme, it's important to reflect on the transformative impact of accepting all parts of ourselves. When we recognize that we are both light and darkness, we not only approach our most authentic essence, but also discover a strength that once seemed unattainable. You are not just what you display to the world, you are also what you hide. And it is in this wholeness, in this delicate balance between the visible and the hidden, that your true strength resides. Working with the shadow is a challenging journey, but also a liberating one. It is an act of courage to face what we prefer to avoid, but it is also a path of profound reconnection with who we are. Remember that every step you take toward acceptance is a step toward inner peace and the freedom to live more fully. Now we want to hear from you. What part of your shadow are you ready to explore? Share your reflections in the comments. Your insight may inspire others who are walking similar paths. If this content resonated with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you help us reach more people who are also seeking self-knowledge and spiritual transformation. Share this video with someone you believe could benefit from this message. And remember, the light only shines fully when we recognize the darkness that accompanies it. Thank you for being here, and until our next encounter.